Welcome to episode 4 of the Power series, and today's episode is called The Dangerous Spiritual Belief That You Should Be Energetically Open to Everything. So this is a very important topic, and I felt really compelled and called to talk about this topic because there is just a lot of issues around discernment going on in the spiritual community, and part of that is due to the fact that there's this kind of secret belief that you're supposed to just be emotionally, energetically available to everyone and everything, which couldn't be further from the truth. It's actually quite dangerous. In this YouTube series called the Power series, I'll be diving into specific topics each week around being embodied in your power, being in leadership, stepping up into greater authority, and being really in discernment with your energy and self-trust. And if we haven't met yet, hi, my name is Margarita Alcantara, and I help New Earth leader entrepreneurs embody their power on the next level so that they can fulfill their mission on Earth. By the end of this video, you'll understand why being energetically open to everything is dangerous, why empaths and people pleasers are often susceptible to this, how love and light conditioning teaches people to override their energetic no, their inner no, their intuition, the difference between energetic openness and energetic sovereignty, and what mature energetic boundaries actually look like in life and as a spiritual business owner. So if this conversation resonates for you, make sure you subscribe to this channel because every single week I will be opening into a new topic that will help you embody your power even more deeply. And so like and subscribe if that resonates for you. So why being energetically open to everything is dangerous? So there are so many reasons why, and I'm not going to treat this as kind of like an energy 101 or empath boundaries 101 kind of thing, but just I'll assume that you are familiar with your own energy, and this is something that could really serve you at the next level. When you're not energetically discerning, especially if you have unhealed trauma and a lot of unintegrated shadow, you are leaking energy. If you are not really connected to who you are and you have a lot of unhealed trauma, a lot of unintegrated shadow that you haven't dealt with, then it's actually going to start leaking energy. You can actually see it in your energy field, like leaks out of that part of the shoulder or, out of, the head. And you'll just see it as like an energetic leak if you're very energetically sensitive and you can pick up on those things. And when you leak energy, you become energetically weak. And this is something that people don't really understand, is that people think, oh yeah, okay, so I'm leaking energy, so what? When you're leaking energy, you actually become weak. Physically weak because you're energetically weak, and mentally weak. It's just going to really create a lot of weakness in your field and in your body. And you're going to feel that as a physical thing as well. When you leak energy, you become energetically weak. So you're unable to kind of thwart negative attacks because you'll be vulnerable to them, and you're going to be easy to manipulate energetically. And I'm not just talking about human to human, but also energetically. There's just a lot of stuff going on that you can't even physically see, and you become physically vulnerable to these kinds of energies and entities. If they have certain intentions about wanting to use your energy for their good, which is called just selfish energy, and these are usually energies, negative entities, and things of that nature that are unable to create their own life force and life field and energetic frequency, and so that they have to steal from others. So that is why when you're leaking energy, that then makes you susceptible to that, and that is no good. And then when you're easy to manipulate, you are not functioning from your own sovereignty because you're actually functioning from something else. It's like a different operating system, if you will. When you're not functioning from your own sovereignty, you are operating from someone else's system, not your own, like I said. And that becomes an issue because then you are not in sovereignty, which means something else is in sovereignty over your own energy, which is not good either. So that is really, really important. And I'll give you a story that kind of illustrates it. It's a bit more extreme, but this will clearly illustrate what I'm talking about. So I once had a patient in New York City, and as you know, I had a private practice in New York City for so many years and then relocated here to Sedona where I continue my private practice. But in New York City, I had one patient who came in complaining that she felt extremely exhausted, no matter how much sleep she got, she was always exhausted, always feeling wasted, and literally just feeling clogged up all the time. And so what I came to learn was that she's actually an empath, and there are actually many, many empaths in New York City that would find me, because New York City otherwise can be very harsh on those who are highly sensitive individuals. But when you start really being empowered in your power as an empath, as a highly sensitive person, then you can maneuver through these things with more ease and grace. And so a lot of these empaths were finding me, and she was one. And so one thing that she was doing was that she was having this understanding that if she made herself just available to anything and anyone that needed her in all of New York City, then she was doing good work. Now you can imagine how this did not pan out for her so well, because what ended up happening was that as a result of making her energy and her energy field open to anything and everyone that was attracted to it, wanted some of it, that kind of thing, then she actually got so energetically clogged up with all kinds of energies that did not belong to her. And a lot of these energies were not of light. They did not mean her well. When she told me this story, she expressed how exhausted she was. She was getting a lot of sleep, but she still felt wasted. She had bags under her eyes. Her skin pallor was very lackluster and dark, and she did not look well. And she did not feel well, and she wanted to do something about it. And so luckily for her, she was all in to her energetic transformation. So we had a lot of Reiki sessions, a lot of discussion. I gave her a lot of tools and really helped her transform a lot of things. And eventually she was able to get much clearer in her energy, had more tools to show up in the world in a more empowered way as an empath. And she no longer did that, walking around New York City and letting herself, just bring in whatever energies was wanting to connect with her. She never did that again. But this is why it is so important, because that is what happens. Because not only was she leaking energy, she was actually getting siphoned in her energy, which means it was getting taken out of her. And so that's why she was so exhausted, no matter how she was sleeping so much. So this is why it's so important to not be leaking your energy, and why it's so important to be in energetic discernment with your energy, and to not be open to everything that is out there, because you get to be discerning. Here's why empaths and people pleasers are often susceptible to this. This is one thing that empaths don't really understand, is that they think that because they're sensitive to energy, because they can pick up energy, that they're now responsible for that energy. That's not true. That is false. When you are highly sensitive to energy, that means you get to be responsible with your own energy. You get to be connected to what your own energy frequency signature feels like, looks like, and is embodied like. And you don't take on other people's energies, because that's not your job, that's theirs, right? Everyone has a sovereign journey, and you get to take your own sovereign journey with your own sovereign energy. And just because you can feel someone doesn't mean you should give them access to you. So empaths and people pleasers, sometimes they are one and the same, unfortunately, because people pleasers actually come from unhealed trauma, usually in their childhood or in a past lifetime. They were responsible for their caretaker and making sure that they were well enough to take care of them. And this is because they otherwise would not be taken care of. And so they then grow up into adulthood feeling like they are responsible for everyone's energy. And then, not surprisingly, they're exhausted. They have no healthy boundaries. People are stepping all over them. They get attracted to narcissists and all this other kind of stuff. So just because you can feel someone and feel their energy doesn't mean that you should give them access to you. You get to be discerning once again. And people pleasing can happen energetically before it shows up on the 3D, on the physical level, and in your behavior and how you speak. So if you say yes when you mean no, for instance, not only are you out of integrity with your word, but you've already opened your field to that person. So let's say there's someone that you really don't want to be around, but you say yes to them anyway instead of saying no, then you are energetically out of integrity with yourself. And then you've also opened the door for that person to be in your life, in your energy, and in your field. And that can then create circumstances where you're then leaking energy. Also, this isn't just about poor boundaries, because you're also giving away your power. So when you're saying yes, when you actually mean no, you are then putting yourself out of integrity, which then puts yourself out of your power. And then you're giving your power away to whatever this thing, this person, situation is that you have said yes to when you actually wanted to say no. Also, when you are a recovered people pleaser, and that means that you do have healthy energy boundaries, you understand what that feels like, you understand what your energy feels like, then you're able to say what belongs to me, what doesn't belong to me, where am I investing my time, my energy, and my frequency into. And so you become a lot more consciously aware of that. And here is how love and light, and you hear this all the time in the spiritual community, here's how love and light conditioning teaches people to override their own energetic no's, override their own intuition. You've probably heard it in this context where it's just like love and light, and which is basically kind of a way of, originally it was really just to share love and light and really be meaningful and in integrity with that and in that consciousness. But then it became a type of spiritual bypassing where you're then ignoring your own needs, ignoring your own body, your mind, your spirit, your heart, and you're avoiding responsibility, you're avoiding your feelings, and you're avoiding your emotions. And that's kind of this level of spiritual bypassing is what love and light has ended up becoming. And that is why, even though I'm all about the love and light, I don't talk about the love and light. I just be the love and light, and I teach the love and light, because actually just the whole mantra of love and light is just very flippant. It's not really grounded in any kind of reality, and it's just only about being high vibe, which is not really what real love and light is about. So you can have a belief that being spiritual means being endlessly open, available, forgiving, receptive, non-judgmental, and accessible. So if you are kind of in this love and light energy, that is typically what that means. The danger in this kind of spiritual bypassing and love and light, where you're just endlessly open, available, forgiving, receptive, non-judgmental, and accessible, is that you start mistrusting your own intuition and sovereignty. And when your body is contracting, for instance, instead of expanding, when you just don't feel okay with something and then you just move forward with it anyway, you're kind of bypassing your own intuitive power and gifts and abilities. And then you ultimately start spiritually bypassing who you really are, and you start negating who you really are. And that is a dangerous place to be, because then you're starting to compromise your integrity when you actually should be in your integrity, especially with what's going on in the world right now. Here's the difference between energetic openness and energetic sovereignty. So when you are open-hearted and you're loving without giving everyone access to you, that means you've got some discernment. So you're not just allowing everyone into your field. You're not just allowing yourself to be open energetically to everything, anything that wants to be connected with you, because I guarantee you it's not all love and light out there. So you want to make sure that you're more into energetic sovereignty, which is where you can feel deeply, receive deeply, and have discernment with what enters your field, body, your consciousness, your space, what you engage with, and what you are into and what you're declining, what you are not complying with, what you're consenting with, all those kinds of things. That is all about you being in energetic sovereignty. Here's what mature energetic boundaries actually look like in life and as a spiritual business owner. It's not about like putting up walls and boundaries around you so that no one can penetrate your field, because that was something that some of my empath patients kind of have done in the past when they're first starting out to learn about energy boundaries, because they feel like, oh, wow, I'm just feeling everything and I just need to shut everything out. So what one of my patients did is that she put a layer of lead all around her, which effectively shut out all the negative energies, but it also shut out everything. So it became very isolating for her, and she felt very alone and lonely. And that's what happens if you're putting a wall of lead around you. So this is not about that. This is about having a wall of light around you so that you can really then be connected to yourself, be open to those higher frequencies and vibrations, but not allowing things of denser vibrations to come through. And so it's not about being in fear. It's not about being hyper vigilant and being scared of everything and everybody, right? Because that's no way to live either, because then you're living in fear actually. So it's more about being tapped into your inner knowing, trusting yourself and your own voice, having discernment, knowing when to be open to energy, knowing when to be closed in your energy field, depending on what's going on around you, right? So stewarding your energy responsibly instead of seeing it as something everyone is entitled to it's something that you become in mastery with. It's not something that you just pop out of the womb knowing. You actually get to hone this on a regular basis, and I would say even daily, just really being in discernment with your energy field, claiming your power, claiming your energy, grounding it into Gaia, right? And really putting on that armor of God on you and being in discernment with the energy around you. When you're in mastery with your energy, you already know what belongs to you. You know what does not belong to you. You know what you will not accept energetically and otherwise around you. You do not take on other people's energies, and you already can feel them. You know, this is something that I do because I hone this every single day in my life because you have to. This is something that it's like waking up and brushing your teeth and washing your face. It's like something you do every day, you know, without negotiation, because it is that important. And you always want to be very discerning in your energy. Now that I've been doing this for so many years now, so many decades, in fact, I can now feel when, like from a mile away, when someone's energy is in integrity, energetic in integrity, if they're not, and I can feel them. When you are more in your maturity and your mastery around your energetic boundaries, then you can then start making very conscious decisions about what you want to do with next steps, right? This is all up to you and your sovereignty and how you get to proceed with being in integrity with your field. And always understanding, because this is one thing too, that when you're an empath, what you are allowing into your field informs your field. And so you've heard that saying where the 5 people who are most around you are influencing your field, are influencing your decisions. That is a reality. One of the ways you can be discerning with your energy boundaries and in mastery with your energetic boundaries in your business, if you are a spiritual entrepreneur, if you are a spiritual business owner, is being discerning with the types of clients that you take in. So even the types of patients you take in, right? So you don't need to just work with these individuals, these new clients, just because they can invest. Right? Just because they can invest does not mean they are truly aligned. A lot of times they are, but sometimes you will have someone there in the mix who is not a good match for you. Another way to have energy discernment is to have contracts and consent forms. And I know that sounds very unsexy, but it's the truth, because the people who will balk at you having contracts are people who don't intend to be in integrity with honoring your energy or their energy. And oftentimes that will result in a hot mess. So you want to make sure that you are having contracts or consent forms depending on what you are showing up with. Like if you are like a massage therapist or a Reiki practitioner or an energy worker, then you can have a consent form. If you are an acupuncturist like I am, then you want to have consent forms. If you have clients who are coaching clients or mentorship clients, then you want to have contracts, because especially if you have really big packages that cost thousands of dollars, you want to make sure that you have contracts in place so that everyone is on board with all the expectations in a work relationship. And so that is another way you can do that. Also, having business hours at specific times when you're available rather than being available 24 hours a day. So this can show up as, for instance, you're only available 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. When you have, let's say, you're offering Voxer or Telegram access to you, you don't want to be available 24/7 whenever they need it, because you get to also have a life and you also get to rejuvenate and have your weekends. And this is also part of having healthy energy boundaries. Also having specific days when you're taking client calls or when you're seeing patients. So instead of saying, I'm available the whole week, just whenever you feel like coming in, just book it and I'll be available, right? You can do that if you want. I wouldn't recommend it, but have specific 2 or 3 days, for instance, where you're seeing clients, where you're seeing patients. So here's what I covered today: why being energetically open to everything is dangerous, why empaths and people pleasers are often susceptible to this, how love and light conditioning teaches people to override their energetic no, the difference between energetic openness and energetic sovereignty, and what mature energetic boundaries actually look like in life and as a spiritual business owner. So let me know in the comments below if any of this resonated for you. And if you feel called out, that's also fine, because this is good to have awareness and consciousness around what you're doing with your energy, because it sounds very out there and woo and like, ooh, we're talking about energy. But the thing is that all of these different layers of your existence actually matter, because when you don't deal with things on the energetic level, then it comes closer and closer and closer until it actually becomes a physical issue. And I've seen this over and over in my acupuncture practice, where all these things that were out there before and just existing in the ether before don't get addressed, and then it becomes, let's say, like, some kind of heart issue or something wrong with the pancreas or something like that, right? It shows up when you don't deal with these things that are on these various levels. So let me know in the comments if any of this resonated for you. And if this resonated for you, I invite you to like and subscribe, because I will be putting out a new episode every single week to help you be more embodied in your power. So next week, I am going to be doing episode 5 of the Power series, which is called 5 Ways You're Hiding Your Power in Your Spiritual Business. So if you are a sacred business owner, you're not going to want to miss it. And I'm really going to share some of these ways where you might be hiding, and maybe you don't think you're hiding, but you actually are. And I will also share how you get to transform that. So I hope to see you next week. Take care.